Let's talk about trade, a topic that's usually dull but recently it's been explosive. What was once the background hum of global commerce suddenly became front-page news, with headlines screaming about tariffs, retaliation, and economic shockwaves. On March 4, 2025, the U.S. slapped a 25% tariff on all imports from Canada and Mexico, citing everything from illegal immigration to drug trafficking. Overnight, the rules of the game changed for businesses on both sides of the border. It was like building a financial wall and expecting the neighbors to pay for it. Suddenly, cross-border trade became a maze of new costs and paperwork, with companies scrambling to figure out what it all meant. The U.S. also hit China with a 10% tariff, turning tense threats into a full-blown trade war. The world's two largest economies were now locked in a high-stakes standoff, with billions of dollars on the line. The world watched as the U.S. risked alienating its closest trading partners. Allies and rivals alike wondered what would come next, as uncertainty rippled through boardrooms and parliaments. This wasn't just about economics, it was about trust and stability in global trade. The immediate effect? Chaos. Markets tumbled, currencies wobbled, and investors braced for impact. Decades-old supply chains were thrown into disarray, and businesses scrambled to adapt. Factories slowed production, shipments stalled, and warehouses sat empty as companies tried to make sense of the new reality. The logic, make foreign goods pricier so Americans buy American, seemed simple. But in practice, it meant higher prices for everything from cars to groceries, and tough choices for families and small businesses. But the global economy isn't that simple. Every country is connected, and a shock in one place sends ripples everywhere else. Punishing suppliers means punishing your own businesses and citizens with higher prices. Suddenly, everyday Americans felt the sting at the checkout line, and small businesses faced impossible choices. The spark was lit, and the fire was spreading. What started as a policy move quickly became a global crisis, with no easy way to put out the flames. The world's largest economy had just thrown a grenade into the middle of a dinner party. Allies, competitors, and bystanders alike were left reeling, unsure of what would come next. Now, everyone was scrambling to see who got hit. From farmers in the Midwest to tech giants in Silicon Valley, the fallout was impossible to ignore. The global economy collectively face-palmed. Leaders and experts wondered how long the shockwaves would last and how deep the damage would go. And the fallout was just beginning. The world was left to pick up the pieces, uncertain about what the next chapter in this trade war would bring. Canada, long seen as the polite neighbor, finally snapped. Trudeau announced a 25% retaliatory tariff on a range of U.S. imports. Canada made it clear, it wouldn't be a passive punching bag. This was more than tit-for-tat, it was a shift in national pride. Canadian officials began aggressively seeking new markets, aiming to reduce dependence on the U.S. The tariffs targeted U.S. goods to inflict maximum pain while sparing Canadian consumers. Suddenly, American products became pricier in Canada, pushing businesses to look elsewhere. The special relationship was on ice. Canada started strengthening ties with the EU, Asia, and other partners. The US had become unreliable and Canada was moving on. The lesson: always have more than one friend, especially when your oldest one turns unpredictable. The era of Canadian deference was over. Canada was playing hardball, and the US was feeling the chill. While Canada hit back, the global wheat market was already shifting beneath everyone's feet. China and Mexico made their own moves, refusing to sit idle as trade tensions escalated. China slapped tariffs on U.S. wheat, corn, cotton, soybeans, and pork, devastating for American farmers who had already been struggling with low prices and unpredictable weather. U.S. agricultural exports to China had already dropped 14% in 2024. Now, the pain deepened, with silos filling up and prices falling further. Brazil and others quickly filled the gap, especially in soybeans, as Chinese buyers turned to South America for reliable supply. China's long-term plan was clear: reduce reliance on unpredictable U.S. imports and invest in domestic production and alternative partners. Mexico, the second-largest buyer of U.S. wheat, faced a 25% tariff and started seeking new suppliers, negotiating with countries like Canada, Argentina, and even Russia. Mexican buyers, hit with higher costs, logically looked elsewhere, determined to keep bread affordable for their people. The U.S. message was simple: pay more or look elsewhere. So they did, leaving American exporters scrambling for new markets. Losing both China and Mexico is a nightmare for U.S. agriculture. threatening the livelihoods of thousands of farmers and rural communities. These aren't niche markets. They're pillars of American exports, representing billions in annual sales and decades of trade relationships. Alienating both at once is commercial recklessness, risking not just profits but America's reputation as a reliable supplier. The global market abhors a vacuum, and Canada was ready to fill it, ramping up production and marketing efforts. With modern combines and high-protein wheat, Canada was poised to seize the moment, offering exactly what buyers needed. The U.S. had created the perfect opening for its northern neighbor, and Canada was quick to take advantage. The trade war was backfiring, with headlines warning of long-term damage and farmers left in limbo, and Canada was ready to capitalize, stepping confidently into the void left by the U.S. Not all wheat is equal. Hard red spring wheat is the king, and Canada is its master. 75% of Canada's wheat is spring wheat, prized for its high protein. This isn't just a crop, it's a national treasure. In 2024 to 25, Canada and the U.S. together produced more spring wheat than all U.S. winter wheat combined, a major shift. The world wants high-protein wheat, and Canada delivers. Canadian wheat commands premium prices globally. Millers and bakers pay more for consistent superior results. U.S. farmers can't match Canada's scale or quality. As U.S. trade ties sour, countries like China and Mexico look to Canada for reliable, high-quality wheat. The trade war meant to help U.S. farmers instead handed Canada a golden opportunity. Canada's reputation soared. The U.S. was left watching its neighbor take the crown. Here's the irony. While the U.S. tried to wall off imports, it became more reliant on Canadian wheat. American mills need Canada's high-protein wheat to blend with domestic varieties. The trade war only highlighted this dependence. In 2024, North Dakota alone imported 44 million bushels of Canadian wheat. Nationally, U.S. imports of Canadian wheat jumped from 65,000 to 92,000 tons in a year. The U.S. tried to protect its farmers but ended up increasing competition at home. American farmers already losing export markets now faced more Canadian wheat in their own backyard. The tariffs meant to help them made things worse. The U.S. was buying more Canadian wheat than ever. Protectionism had backfired spectacularly. Canadian farmers found a booming market to the south. The political noise in Washington couldn't drown out the demand. The U.S. needed Canadian wheat, like it or not. The data tells the story. American decline, Canadian rise. Over the past decade, the wheat landscape in North America has shifted dramatically, with fortunes reversing on either side of the border. U.S. agricultural exports to China fell to $29.25 billion in 2024, with wheat exports hit hard by new tariffs. Once a dominant player in the global wheat market, the U.S. now faces mounting barriers that have slowed its trade and shaken its confidence. The once bright Mexican market worth $2 billion was now at risk. Long-standing trade relationships are fraying, and American wheat is losing ground to competitors. These numbers represent real farms and communities facing an uncertain future. For many, the impact is personal, livelihoods are threatened, and the sense of stability is fading. Meanwhile, Canadian wheat imports into the U.S. surged, a structural shift, not a blip. Canadian farmers are seizing the moment, filling the gaps left by American shortfalls. American millers need high-protein wheat, and Canada supplies it. The demand for quality is relentless, and Canadian wheat consistently meets the mark. U.S. farmers are outcompeted on quality and availability. As Canadian harvests thrive, American fields struggle to keep pace, both in yield and in reputation. While U.S. exports are choked by tariffs, Canadian wheat finds a welcome home in America. The border has become a gateway for Canadian grain, not American. Spring wheat now makes up 26% of U.S. wheat production and 75% of Canada's. This shift is reshaping the industry, with Canada leading the way in both volume and quality. Canada's focus on quality paid off. Years of investment in research and sustainable practices have given Canadian wheat a global edge. The numbers are clear. U.S. agriculture is hampered by protectionism, while Canada seizes the opportunity. Policy decisions have real-world consequences, shaping who wins and who loses. The trade war shifted the balance. What was once a level playing field is now tilted, and the effects ripple through every link in the supply chain. Canada became the world's wheat powerhouse. Its silos are full, its exports booming, and its farmers optimistic about the future. The U.S. was left behind. The numbers don't lie. For American wheat, the challenge is clear. adapt, or risk being overshadowed for good. This isn't just about numbers, it's about people. American farmers, many from generations-old families, are caught in a painful squeeze. Costs stay high, but crop prices fall as export markets dry up. Imagine being a wheat farmer in Kansas or North Dakota, your business plan shattered overnight. Surplus grain, fewer buyers, and lower prices hit hard. Policies meant to protect them are making things worse. Canadian neighbors thrive while U.S. farmers struggle. Grain trucks with maple leaf flags head south, deepening the sense of betrayal. The fear, these changes, are permanent. Once lost, markets like China and Mexico are hard to win back. American farmers are watching their future slip away. Experts agree. The outlook for U.S. agriculture is grim. Dan Bass of AgriSource Inc. calls the situation difficult and problematic. He warns tariffs could escalate to 50% or 60%, devastating global trade. For farmers, that would be catastrophic. Protectionism is a losing game for a country that relies on exports. The U.S. built its reputation as a reliable supplier. Now that's unraveling. Global supply chains will simply reroute around the U.S. The country risks isolating itself and losing relevance. The short-term political wins are causing long-term economic pain. Lost markets, increased competition, and a diminished global role are the consequences. Experts have sounded the alarm. The question, will anyone in power listen before it's too late? The clock is ticking. This isn't a temporary spat, it's a fundamental realignment of North American agriculture. The U.S. has lost its leadership in the grain trade, Canada is rising with superior wheat and a bold trade strategy. For U.S. farmers, the future is uncertain and risky. Shrinking markets and increased competition are the new reality. American agriculture faces a painful reckoning. The romantic image of the independent farmer is under threat. This is a lesson in global interconnectedness. No country can act alone without consequences. Trade isn't zero-sum. Cooperation brings prosperity, conflict brings decline. The U.S. tried to change the rules and lost ground. Canada is now king of North American wheat. The new order has arrived with a distinct Canadian accent.